Hello, brothers and sisters. Today is Saturday in the 5th week of Lent. Thank you for joining with me as we journey back to God. Liturgical readings for today are from the prophecy of Ezekiel, chapter 37, from verse 21 to verse 28, and John's Gospel, chapter 11, from verse 45 to verse 57. I'm going to be sharing a reflection with you today that is titled, Whose Side Are You On? My brothers and my sisters, as Holy Week unfolds, the tension and the drama surrounding Jesus is growing. As I said, the gospel text for today is from John chapter 11. In chapter 12, Jesus will enter Jerusalem triumphantly, and he will be welcomed by the crowd singing Hosanna to the Son of David. And so Holy Week will begin, and the plot gets thicker and thicker, beginning from this 11th chapter. Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead, and the text of John chapter 10 verse 42 says, many believed in him. It is this growing belief in him that was causing the Jewish leaders to be rattled, to have sleepless nights, because all this while they looked down on him. They looked at him as a rabble-rouser. They looked at him as a fake, and that he would simply go away. But now, the situation was getting more difficult for them to handle. And so, their emotions were stirred. They began planning a murder. Meanwhile, Jesus, by his words and by his actions, by his teachings and ministry, had gotten an entire Samaritan village to believe in him in John chapter 4, verse 41. And that belief extended to the royal household when Jesus heals the royal official's son in chapter 4, verse 50. And there is the belief in Jesus after he foretells his death, after healing the man that was born blind in John chapter 9, verse 36 to verse 38. When he talks about himself as the good shepherd, and he makes an appearance at the feast of dedication in the temple in chapter 10, verse 42. And then in chapter 11, we have Martha's profession of faith. And then, of course, the Jews that witnessed Lazarus coming out of the tomb in John chapter 11, verse 45. And overarching all of this, many began to acknowledge him as the prophet, some as even the Messiah. All of this was too much for the high priest. All of this was too much for Caiaphas and the Jewish establishment. This rabble-rouser that they thought he was, with his band of uneducated followers, had now in their estimation become a political problem that they had to deal with. And if this got out of hand, Caiaphas would be out of a job. So the text of today tells us that some of the Jews who had witnessed Lazarus being raised from the dead excitedly went to the Pharisees to tell them that Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. Now the question is, why did they go to the Pharisees? Didn't they know that the Pharisees were looking for an opportunity to kill him? Were they not in chapter 7 already saying, is this not the man they are looking to kill? How come he's all over the place preaching and nobody is saying anything to him? It was common knowledge that these people were out to kill him. So whose side were these people on anyway? Going to the Pharisees to tell them that he had raised Lazarus from the dead. Of course, this would be amazing news, normally. But instead of being amazed at the news, this news seemed to have been the last straw that broke the camel's back. The Pharisees had had enough of Jesus. They needed to do something about this man and do it quick before he wreaked further havoc in their lives and to the establishment. So the chief priests and the Pharisees called an emergency meeting of the Sanhedrin. These religious officials were extremely concerned about Jesus and his growing influence with the people. At the same time, they were fearful and angry. The Sanhedrin realized that they were losing some of their power with the people, and this they could not allow to continue. Jesus was not only a threat to their power and their control, but they were also worried that the Romans might come and take their land and become and assume total control of their nation. So the chief priests and the scribes had this meeting of this ruling body of the temple. And when they gathered and they were speaking about Jesus, it was all about fear and doom and gloom. His growing popularity, his growing followership. Action needed to be taken so that they don't lose their exalted offices, their prestige, their wealth, and their influence with the people. And in the course of the discussion, Caiaphas, who was the high priest, voiced what many of them were actually thinking, that Jesus had to die. There was no alternative. He was too much of a threat to their power. Caiaphas justified the cause of this action by saying that it was better for one man to die rather than for the whole nation, the entire nation, to be torn to shreds. And so, brothers and sisters, the stage was set. The decision had been made. The plot has been set in motion on how to kill Jesus Christ. Take note of this. The miracles of Jesus, especially and specifically the raising of Lazarus from the dead, had been attracting a lot of people's attention. Some persons were getting somewhat confused about his personality, about his identity, and probably, they didn't know which way to belong, which side to be on. Should they follow the establishment or should they follow this new teaching with authority and power? The chief priests, the Pharisees, were alarmed at this growing movement. They took their side. They knew the side they were on already. They were afraid that they might be overthrown. They took their side. Caiaphas made his decision. He knew which side he belonged to. But a lot of people didn't know exactly what side they belonged to. You see, very often we see this murderous element still in our society. There are those who will kill simply because they are afraid of the truth. There are those who will kill simply because they are afraid of losing their prestige positions, their comfort, and their power. There are those who will kill the messenger of truth and justice because of their fears. Jesus himself was aware of the plot to get rid of him. And so he stayed in the shadows of Jerusalem until he decided to go to Ephraim with his disciples. And he stayed there, according to the text, until it was time for the Passover. Many of the people who traveled to Jerusalem for the Passover were looking for him. They had heard about him. They wanted to see him for themselves. They wanted to form an opinion about him. They wanted to take a decision about him. They were hoping also that they would hear him preach. And that, of course, probably would have been able to help them determine whose side they'll be on. You see, dear friends, in this passage, we see the sovereignty of God at play. We see the almighty hand of God at play. God's hand that is all across human history. These Pharisees and Caiaphas and the establishment, they thought that they were doing their utmost best to get rid of Jesus. But what they didn't understand was that they were actually acting out the divine plan. God is constantly guiding all of human history to a purposeful end. And as Paul would say, and I love that text, Romans chapter 8, verse 28, that he works everything for the good of those who love him. No matter what you are going through or what human beings might do to you, God is still in control. He's working everything gradually towards a particular end. I came across this interesting story I want to share with you. It's about two shopkeepers who were bitter rivals. Their shops were directly across the street from each other. But they would spend each day keeping track of the other person's business. If one got a customer, he would taunt his rival with smiles and songs and all manners of speech. And this went on and on for years. One night, an angel appeared to one of the shopkeepers in a dream and said, "I'll give you anything you ask, but whatever you receive, your competitor will receive twice as much." So the angel said to him, "Would you rather be rich? You can be rich. But remember, your competitor will be twice as wealthy as you are. Do you want to live a long life with abundant good health? You can have all of that. But remember, your competitor will have a longer life and a healthier life. So what is your desire?" The man frowned and thought deep and long. And then he said, "Here's my request. Since you said whatever I get, he gets twice as much, then strike me blind in one eye." What a story. My dear friends, this illustrates the attitude of the Pharisees and the Sadducees when they heard about the resurrection of Lazarus. They couldn't stand it. They looked at the scoreboard, as it were, and Jesus was way ahead, leaving them behind. This is the condition of unbelief. This is what unbelief does to people. So as you look at the final verses of this 11th chapter, a sad truth surfaces. And what is that? Some people will never believe. No matter what you do, no matter the signs they see, no matter what they hear, there are some people who just will not believe. And that is truth. But even worse than that is the fact that Unbelief in Jesus brings out the worst in human beings. Let me say that again. Unbelief in Jesus brings out the worst in human beings. It exposes the worst nature of a human heart. Notice the motives that surface in the hearts and the speech of these Sanhedrin members who were out to kill Jesus. Their speech was dripping with jealousy, with hypocrisy, with deceit, with selfish ambition, with self-centeredness, cowardice, with a ruthlessness that is beyond comprehension, a rationalization of evil, complete heartlessness, irrational anger, and faulty projections about the future. Their speech was pervaded with fear. That is what happens when unbelief settles in your heart. My dear brothers and sisters, belief, on the other hand, in Jesus brings out the best in a man. It brings out all the good qualities in a man. It brings out brotherliness. It brings out friendship. It brings out love. It brings out compassion, mercy, kindness. It brings out tolerance and acceptance. That is what belief does. So, as the stage is set for Palm Sunday, and the activities of the next 7 days are going to move along very quickly, I ask the question, whose side are you on? Have you decided which side you are on? Are you on the Lord's side? Are you on the side of belief, or are you on the side of unbelief? But I can assure you, being on the side of belief will bring out the best in you, will cause your heart to lighten up with the joy of the Lord that is your strength, and it will grant you, it will bring you abundant life. Choose Jesus and share this message. God bless you.